now we get to the meat and potatoes of EA's conference.
Yum-yums.
Yes, the yum-yums, if you will. Star Wars Squadrons. Squadrons? What did I say? Squadrons. That's what I'm saying. Star Wars Squadrons. Star Wars Squadrons. New fighter pilot game in the Star Wars universe. Takes place after Episode 6. The second Death Star has been destroyed. You play as one of the fighter pilots. One, on the Rebellion side, one for the Empire side. You go back and forth between missions.
Kind of play as both, right? Yeah.
So we saw the first trailer for the game a couple of days before. They showed it again in this conference, and then they showed us some cool gameplay. Mm-hmm. One of the coolest aspects to me, Chris, is that you could play this all in VR.
That was really cool.
I thought that was crazy.
It's awesome that you can sit in VR and turn your head like you're in an X-Wing cockpit. That's like the dream for Star Wars fans, right? I'm glad that this game exists. It's kind of like a remake of the old Rogue Squadron games for like PlayStation 2 era. And I'm thinking right now, like, as I kind of came down from like, oh, cool, new Star Wars game. Mm-hmm. I think what they showed a lot of gameplay. They talked a lot about what you're going to be doing. I really like that you get to play as both the Rebellion and the Empire. In this story where you're going to kind of see different sides of the same coin.
And it's canon, right? Because every Star Wars game is canon.
Yeah, it should be canon. It's right after Episode 6. The multiplayer looks awesome. Mm-hmm. And this is the style of game that, like, I feel like I should be more overjoyed for. When it comes to Star Wars games, I mean, I love the Jedi stuff. I love using a lightsaber. But to me, the best part of the Star Wars games is being in a cockpit.
Yeah, remember the original Star Wars Battlefront 2? You could jump in and out of like Starcrafts and stuff, fight, and then land in the base and start attacking stuff. Like that was always very cool.
Oh, that was the best. So to me, the closest thing to like having Jedi senses was like how fast you react in the cockpit, not so much just hack slashing a lightsaber. Mm-hmm. So I was always drawn more to the cockpit style games, the flying games. For Star Wars. Okay. And this is no different. I think it's going to be an awesome game. It looks great. Graphics look awesome.
And there's like different ships, right? There's 5 different classes or something like that, and you could customize them all based on your mission and your play style, which is really cool. Because I was afraid there wasn't going to be any customization aspect, right? I was like, all right, I'm just playing a ship. I was like, it doesn't seem like it's going to be that fun. But
as well as the upgrades for your weapons can just go right to your play style, right? Like
and
if
you can change your character look.
Good. Yeah, so that's awesome too. And be aliens or whatever you want to be, right? Like you could be a Twi'lek, you could be, a Gungan, whatever the hell you want to be. So that's awesome. The other side of this to me is I've been a little kind of pensive towards this game.
Why?
I think to me it's kind of just the EA trope at this point. Where
the microtransaction fear?
No, like they already said there's no microtransactions in this game. But to me, it's another Star Wars game, right? It's almost the way I kind of feel with DC movies, where it's like, okay, they're just throwing out another DC movie. Where the Star Wars game, probably besides Jedi Order, right? Mm-hmm. Where they came back, EA got this huge contract, they did Battlefront and Battlefront 2, and they were whatever.
Yeah, that's a good one. Let's leave it at that. They were whatever.
They were just whatever.
Okay.
And then you have Jedi Fallen Order, which was awesome, and it's a hit, and it made a lot of money, and the story's great, and it was, basically the Star Wars game we all were kind of waiting for and wanting. And now they're doing Squadrons, which is kind of, again, another game that used to exist. It's now going to be brand new and different style, but it also feels to me kind of like the EA trope of just like, yeah, here's the name. We have Star Wars content. Don't be mad at us. I don't know how much all these games have replayability. I beat Jedi Fallen Order fairly on an average time limit.
Okay.
With everyone. I don't think I've touched it since.
Well, I mean, to be fair, that's a story-driven game, right? Like, you 100%. Play it once, and then you're done unless you want to play through the whole story again. Like God of War.
Yeah, unless you do like a new game plus. You do a new game plus. There wasn't any DLC. Mm-hmm. Which, it's weird, right? To see, like, oh my god, there's no DLC. Like almost every story game now has DLC, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but
no, it's fine. It's good.
It's a great game. It didn't feel especially long, and I think for something like Squadrons, where you just had this hit with an RPG, action adventure style game, to go to a Squadron where it's like kind of a mix, right? Like it has single player focus, it has multiplayer focus, but I don't know as far as the full facet of gaming where it's like, oh, Squadrons, that'll be in my mind for the next year. Squadrons, that'll be in my play decks for this long. The way, you have Avengers dropping in September. You have, Last of Us 2 that just dropped. You have Ghost of Tsushima,
which is apparently exploding people's PlayStations. Have you seen that? Last of Us
really?
2. Yeah, apparently. I don't know if it's people's PlayStations or the game is just that big. Like, people are playing it and their systems are overheating. And it sounded like it's engine. Like, IGN posted a bunch of people like talking about it. I was like, oh, wow.
That sucks.
Yeah, it's definitely not good.
Good thing I have an external hard drive. Yeah. So, like, it's one of those things where, like, yeah, like, this is a great game, but is it going to be a great game for a week? Is it going to be a great game for a month?
There you go. I mean, that's
I
think, a good way to look at it.
You know what I mean? I still think EA is figuring out how they're doing Star Wars. I don't think they mastered it yet. And also, to me, what's the oddest thing is, so we knew kind of this conference was going to be focused around it, right? At the base, the big bottom of this conference was going to be all Star Wars Squadrons. Why release the trailer on Monday?
True.
If you're just gonna rewatch the trailer during the conference and then talk about it more. To me,
well, they also did They did a second trailer, right? They did the gameplay.
They did gameplay, which is great. But again, why show it when you could just give me the crazy surprise 4 days later, and I don't know what's coming, right?
Like
to me, your conference, you're not even. Don't say anything about it.
Well, I mean, true.
Don't say anything about it until the conference. It was 4 days away. I don't understand the decision to throw the full trailer out Monday and say, hey, we're this is coming out in October, blah, blah, blah. And then 4 days later, you start by replaying the trailer and obviously more stuff. But to me, that takes away that factor of oh my God, another Star Wars game this year. Mm-hmm. Or this conference just went from below average to above average.
See, I think it hurts the conference more, less the game. I don't think the showing of it on Monday has any bearing on the game at all. I think it's more on the conference. I think the conference would have been stronger if it showed that, because it would have had that shock value, right? We would be like, oh wow, new Star Wars game. Our conversation would be less, actually reviewing it and talking about it on a level head. We would both be super excited. We'd be like, oh my God, there's a new Star Wars game. Oh my God, we can do this. We can do this. We can fly. Is it going to be good? Is it going to suck? Now we're like, oh, we talk about it like rational people now, right?
But that excitement for those big conference drops in the midst of a bunch of games.
Good. It's good for the conference.
It's not just good for the conference, it's good for the game. Because that creates the buzz about that game. Right? If you're the best thing in a slew of, 20 games, you're going to forget about a lot of those because you're thinking about this one.
That's true.
And in the future, when you're looking to say, hey, am I buying a game a month and a half before a new console comes out? That game should be the exciting, in your head, have to play it, can't not stop thinking about it game, right? It's not just about the conference is kind of the threshold to give you that uber marketing value of hey, yes, it helps the conference. Agreed. But it also helps the game in the form of hey, this is still in my mind by the time we hit October with the way the world is right now. And other games are coming out right now.
I want to touch base on something you said with this game. Is it a game that's going to be good for a day, a week, a month, a year? I feel that is a way that a lot of us who consume content, whether it's TV, movies, video games, we kind of view stories now, right? I think we've made that change just because there's so many different stories and content out there, right? So we look at something something just came out, like Tiger King. Okay, was that good for a day? Sure, a month? Yes. A couple months? Yes. A year? Probably not, right? Bird Box, that was good for a weekend. We have TV shows that are good for a month or two or a year. Then you have some shows that last like a lifetime, like Avatar: The Last Airbender. We have some games that last forever. People still talk about the original Star Wars Battlefronts, right?
Oh, hands down. I still have it.
Yeah, and now we look at some other games and like, oh, God of War was good for a couple months, but now it's like slow. Now we're waiting for the next part of the story or something else, right? So we kind of go in these trends. So like looking at this game particularly, and like anything in the world, like does it have legs to stand, and how long can it walk in your respect memory bank, if you will, whatever. Like this game, I see it walking for a day, see it walking for a week, see it walking for a couple months. I don't see it walking past that. I don't see it living past that. I think that's why it's at a $40 value.
I'm in the boat of like I see it. No, yeah, like I think it'll be a really fun game for about a month. And again, like part of it's like, okay, EA, we're gonna focus on Squadrons and not like these Star Wars games that really blow up the timeline, and obviously they want to have a diverse bank of different games, right? Like they just put out their big game. You maybe they're hey, this is Squadrons. This is your kind of like fun game to focus on for a bit
and
while
they also
we work
need to
on.
Make money, right? This game can generate revenue they need to do their bigger projects, I guess.
And by no means am I upset that this game exists, and I'm gonna get the game regardless. Star Wars, and it looks awesome, and it delves into some of the funnest things that I think Star Wars games do so differently, which is the space flying and the battles and stuff like that. So I think it's going to be a great game, but I don't know in the scheme of things, overall EA, one, I don't know how much money they're going to make on this as much as they hope based on, hey, I could buy this game and enjoy it for a couple weeks, or I could save that money and put it towards a new console. Or I could, buy this game instead, that's going to be more story driven or whatever the case, right? So I don't know. To me, it seems like kind of like the common EA trope, that trend that they've been doing for the past couple of years. That is kind of falling in line with, okay, there's a Star Wars game, but is it going to be more Jedi Fallen Order or more Battlefront? Right? Like which side are we going to be on? It's a hard game to kind of figure out where it rests in the scheme of things.
You did a comparison earlier to EA to DC in the movie spectrum, right? So, like, now they're putting out content. Like, is it... All right. Do we have here a, Joker kind of game? Or do we have a Justice League kind of game? You know what I mean? Like, what side of the fence is it going to be on in a mixed bag of content that they have provided? So, we all hope that it's towards the new wave of, like, DC. Like, we hope Squadrons is more like, Jedi Fallen Order. And, the old games of Legend, just like we hope that the new movies are like Joker, Shazam, and they're like the new wave of stuff.
Like even without the, the DC trope too, like it's just Battlefront where it was like, hey, the game's really good unless you have to start buying stuff. Or, or the story's like, okay, until you have to buy stuff. Or is it Jedi Fallen Order, which is awesome and story driven and kind of like what not only fans wanted, but, Star Wars should feel like. It should feel like you're a part of the story. It should feel like you're growing the timeline and growing the story and the legends and adding pieces to the puzzle of this massive universe. And I think Squadrons kind of falls in the middle of both at the moment. Obviously, you got to play the campaign to see, and you got to test out the multiplayer. But I think it's going to be a really fun game. I don't know how much it's going to impact Star Wars or hardcore Star Wars fans that are going to be like looking for new parts of story or looking for things in timelines.
So that leads
which is a big part of the Star Wars verse too, right? It's how fans perceive, like, oh, is this part of canon? Is this like what part of the story means something?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of just addressed the next point I wanted to touch upon, like the importance of this story, and like I wanted to ask you, and it's more importantly, you at home or you wherever you are listening to or watching this, right? Like, is this a game that you're going to get? Chris already answered he's going to get it. I'm only going to get it for VR if I want it. Other than that, I think it's a pass for me, even though I like it. But like, how is this game going to feel like Star Wars? Do you think it's going to capture that essence? We want to know what you think. I want to know what you think, Chris, before we sign off.
I think it will feel like Star Wars because it is Star Wars. I think, like, obviously that's the simplest way to say it, but I think it will feel like Star Wars. It looks like Star Wars. It, when you watch the trailer, it feels like Star Wars. It feels big, bombastic. It feels tense and when you're, flying through some tight quarters. The upgrades look awesome. The personalization of weapons look awesome. The overall is, will it be something that's staying? There are certain Star Wars books I've read that I can remember almost everything about because they're that good. And when it comes to story, and it puts a lot of puzzle pieces in. Will this game do that? Or will it be like, hey, this was fun for a while and then I'm going to forget it and move on to the next thing? I think that's more of like what part of, like, how big will this be engulfed into Star Wars is the more bigger question. Because, if you remember, they did Battlefront 2 and was kind of this story that was post Episode 6, right? It was about a pilot that was on Endor when the last, Death Star blew up, and it's kind of like a similar trope, right? This is post Episode 6.
Yep.
The Death Star gets destroyed, and Rebels and the rest of the Empire are figuring out what to do. So it's kind of a similar trope in a different way. So I just hope that it doesn't fall into the category of how Battlefront 2 happened, and how that messy, just kind of it became a mess, and not so much about the game or the story, but how much of a mess it was overall because of who made it. So that's really the focus.
Well, guys, thank you so much for watching. That was the end of our podcast. We want to hear what you think about EA as a whole right now with the conference. More importantly, we want to hear your thoughts on Star Wars Squadron. Is this a game that you're going to pick up on October 2nd of 2020, right before the new holidays? Is this going in your trick-or-treat bag? Are you excited for it? As always, I'm Rob Moran, and with me is the wonderful
Chris Heller.
Yes. Make sure you follow us on all of our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and keep the conversation going. As always, we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Jersey Comic Crew. Podbean.com.